in it for all of you to capitalize on by way of opportunities. We have a star cast here that understands this business much better than I do. But just to take forward the conversation that we were just having on the evolution of the beauty landscape in India, I think the big shift has really been from moving from personal care to beauty as a category. And I think that will capture many of the opportunities that we intend to speak about. I think you've heard premiumization in Anchit's conversation, in what Falguni said as well. But premiumization doesn't necessarily just mean price alone. What does it mean in terms of value, and how do we decode that for the Indian consumer? Those will be questions that I will put to the panel as well. What could potentially be some of the hurdles and some of the challenges? There's been a D2C explosion, and I see many young people here in the room, in the audience, perhaps looking at opportunities and what this beauty landscape means for them. But what does it mean to create a beauty brand in India when you're up against the incumbents, large domestic incumbents, but you're also up against global players who are now playing here in the Indian market and vying for the consumer's wallet? And more importantly, whether we're China or America, the question is, what is the spending capacity of the Indian consumer, and how is that likely to evolve? So without further ado, let's get started. And Aseem, I'm going to start by asking you because, only because Rohan said you're the OG, so let's get started with you, Aseem. Today, as per the report, in terms of value, beauty is about a $32 billion market in India. It's expected to go to about $34 billion by 2028. That's what the report suggests. Many aspects of what has changed in India, whether it is the democratization by way of technology, it's the advent of platforms like Nykaa, or it is the changing demographics and so on and so forth. What would you characterize as the big shifts, the top 3 shifts to your mind that are shaping currently the beauty landscape in India?
Shereen, it's a question which I can, continue to answer for a very, very long time. But firstly, before
we don't have all evening, just a little part of it though.
Before I do that, I think I'm going to, congratulate Falguni and Anchit and the entire Nykaa team for setting up such an amazing event today. And it's an event where we get to see the community and meet them. A lot of them. It's a small community of beauty enthusiasts who are here. So coming back to your question, incidentally, if you look at how beauty has progressed over the last 3 decades, if we want to call it, because L'Oréal has been there in India now, and 2024 is also a year when we are here in this country for 30 years.
Okay.
So we're celebrating that. For 30 years, the evolution has been from, let's start with the industry first, in terms of the number of players. Imagine 3 decades ago, there were very, very limited players. Yeah. And one of the big shift, or the tectonic shift which has happened, especially post the COVID era, because there was always the digitalization part which was happening, and it was taking off. But COVID was the big accelerator, right? Yeah. So the industry then suddenly had a spurt of new entrants and players. So now it's no more few players trying to run the entire beauty industry and expand it. Yeah. There are many, many more players because the barrier to enter is much lower. The second one is the categories themselves. And you can imagine 3 decades ago where the categories were very, very basic in terms of the routines of the consumer. Yeah. And today you have categories starting from skincare, which still remains, but is highly sophisticated, right? You have hair care, which is highly sophisticated. Right. And this is some of the things which are also mentioned in the report on stepification, and we'll probably talk about that.
How many steps do you have in your morning and evening routine, Aseem?
Normally, hair should be minimum 3, and this is what we are trying to...
Minimum 3?
Minimum 3.
What do you do?
Which is shampoo, conditioner, and a serum.
Okay.
So, and this is what we are also wanting most of the consumers in India to follow, because it's a great routine to have to take care of your hair. The second bit is, of course, to make sure that you're taking care of your scalp. Right. Health is very important. So that becomes a very big point right now for everyone to have a conversation around, because it's not just about hair. it is about hair and scalp put together.
Yeah.
So then coming back to the third shift, which is the consumer, which is a highly connected consumer, and we don't get to speak enough again and again to say highly digitalized world. It's a digitalized world, but it's also a village. Because what we're looking at is now, on this planet, communities which are formed, which are agnostic of the geographical location.
Correct.
Right? So it's highly evolved access to education on products and routines, and also what you need for yourself is something which now is the third tectonic shift, if you want to, from an industry point of view, from a category point of view, and also from a consumer's point of view, which we see evolving now. So, which to me says that clearly in India, this is the most exciting time to be in the beauty industry for the coming next 5, 10, 15, 20 years' time.
Well, the most exciting time to be a part of India's beauty industry, and thank you very much for sharing your stepification for hair care with us. I'll get to the trends that you're going to be capitalizing on. But Geetika, let's talk about the big shift that's happened in terms of spending. And Falguni said, till a couple of years ago, perhaps a cart would have had 3 products, a kajal at best, and maybe a moisturizer or something else, and maybe a third as a nail polish. What does a cart today typically look like? And more importantly, what does the value of the cart look like? How much has the value gone up in the last 5 years when we talk about consumption?
So absolutely, to Falguni's point, it has been an explosion that has been witnessed by Nivea, of course, but also by other companies around. If I were to put a value to the cart, that's hard because I get only Nivea values. I'm happy to share that we've grown fairly quickly. But if I were to look at how Nykaa's performance has also been over the last 12 years, it is exponential, right? So you see the number of consumers that come on the platform. So I think it's a testimony to the fact that the tectonic shifts in behavior we were discussing has genuinely been there. I remember, in fact, in 2003, I was doing this little stint in Ponds, and it was exactly this conversation around, I put talcum powder on my face when I need to go out, right? So we have come a long way from there, where this time when I was doing some consumer work, and I was like, what's your skincare routine? And she was like, AM or PM? Just start from the morning, and, you're not supposed to put it on, you're supposed to dab it in, and, and hyaluronic acid, etc., etc. So this has now become common parlance, and I think that reflects in the experimentation we see on the categories. And that reflects in, therefore, the cart sizes going up, the willingness to experiment with luxury brands, which in the past would generally be these, mass cosmetics, has really then been phenomenally high, at least from when I view it from our lens, from a company lens. It used to be only, like you said, the body lotions and the creams. And now we are seeing a lot of these exciting new innovations coming.
So let me ask you this, for all of us who grew up, I mean, Nivea was the cold cream, the go-to cold cream.
OG.
Now, the OG.
The real OG.
So, the real OG. So does an evolving market like this throw up a challenge for an incumbent player like yourself as it gets far more competitive? And does it then impact the role and relevance that you played in it as well? How do you stay relevant in a market that has now moved from cold creams to serums and what have you?
Yeah, so I think the first time I ever meet anybody and I say I work for Nivea, they would give instances of, my mom used to use this brand. In fact, Anchit himself said, the grandmother used to use Nivea, So it is absolutely, from that lens, been part of their legacy. It therefore taps into a lot of rich emotional space. However, I think therein also lies its weakness. Oh, my mom used to use the brand, right? And therefore, are we renovating it enough? Which is why, in fact, this year we've launched some exciting new things, right? And we plan to do more around that. Because while we tap into that love that the brand gets, the great quality, international, modern, credentials that we have, we also want to be innovative. We also want to be kind of listening to what consumers want. So we launched this new derma range, with salicylic acid and all of that, So I think just keeping up with the trends, and that is just a beginning of what more we want to do. So I think the important thing, therefore, is you keep the solid foundations of great quality products, but you build on it with exciting new innovations so that you're really remaining relevant and resonant really with the consumers of today.
Well, I'll come to the kinds of innovation that you're working on in just a second. But Anchit, let's talk to you. The 35 million people that are on the platform at this point in time buying stuff from Nykaa, the cart size in terms of value, and maybe you can shed some light on that. Give us a sense of how much that's changed. What are people spending their money most on today?
Well, this sounds a little bit like an investor question in an investor conference.
I've spent 25 years at CNBC, so I'm well trained for that.
Yeah. No, I think, look, I think everyone's kind of covered it, which is beauty is a very sophisticated category in most markets. And in skincare, it's AM and it's PM. But it's even more than that. There are boosters, and if you go to certain developed markets, skincare routines can run into almost 10 steps.
Yeah.
If you look at makeup, historically in India was a kajal, a lips and an eyes market.
Yeah.
But there is a massive acceleration in the growth of face, which is foundation, primers, concealers. If I look at hair care, again, Aseem alluded to the point of a 3-step routine in hair care. So beauty is actually a very wide category, and there is a tremendous opportunity for consumers to be not only widening the basket, but also increasing the frequency of purchase. And that's where the work that Nykaa does is very important in collaboration with all of our brand partners, which is to drive the premiumization of beauty, which you spoke about. And as I said, and as you also mentioned, premiumization is not necessarily selling a higher price product. That is, of course, one type of premiumization, but increasing the stepification of beauty, increasing the number of products is also equally important, if not more important, because that addresses a larger demographic. So a lot of the work that we do is on driving awareness for the sheer size and complexity of this category, and how to simplify it for consumers and how to make it more accessible. And as a result, if you look at our baskets, I won't give you exact numbers in terms of basket size change.
Ballpark.
Yeah, so we always say that the basket size is different for repeat customers and different for new customers. Repeat customers are customers who've transacted on our platform and for a second, a third, or fourth time. And our ability to influence their consumption with every subsequent transaction is very powerful. New customers, on the other hand, new customers who download the app, they may also be new to beauty as a category. So their consumption in terms of basket size looks very different from repeat customers. So repeat customers can have very large baskets. There are some of our customers who shop as close to as, if you start cutting it quartile-wise, once a month, twice a month. And then the Nykaa average is about 4 times a year, which is disclosed in our, in our filings. So you have customers at on all sides of the spectrum. Customers who buy once or twice, customers who buy 12 to 15 times in a year. And the basket size reflects that as well. There are consumers who will buy up to 6 to 8 to 10 products in a cart, and there are customers who buy 1 or 2. But even those who buy 1 or 2, that's the exciting part of our job. How do we get them to premiumize over time? And that's the work we can do very effectively through content, through education, through the amazing brands and products which our brand partners launch, and through a very powerful CRM program, because we are an app-based platform. To give you a sense, our customers will visit us 50 times in a year. That's almost once a week, and they transact on average 4 times in a year. So they're coming to educate themselves, they're coming to learn. So I think in India...
Not necessarily just buy.
Yeah, and we never wanted that, right? We never wanted to be just a transaction platform, because then you have a very different type of consumer behavior, and that requires a different type of incentivization. If consumers are willing to organically open our app or to enter our stores, just to explore, to play with this category, to educate themselves, that for us is the most important thing, because that creates demand for the future.
Right.
If not immediate, at least demand for the future.
Yeah. Since we're talking about the future, Aseem, let me come to you now on what the future looks like. And while we've got some indication of what Indian consumers are buying, what Indian consumers are spending on, how different typically is the Indian consumer? L'Oréal is operating across the world at this point in time. Is there any perceptible, tangible difference in how the Indian consumer is spending, what the Indian consumer is spending on? Are there any India-specific trends that L'Oréal is capturing on?
Shereen, just to come back on, because from a L'Oréal's perspective, being a beauty tech company which is leading in this category, and this is what we do for a living for the last 115 years, I think fundamentally what we need to look at is not just how the sophisticated consumer in India behaves. For us, it is a larger thing, because what we are looking at in terms of India as a specific market
Yeah.
is going to be a lead country for L'Oréal for consumer acquisition. So when you're looking at that, what you're looking at is a very long-term perspective. So if I give you a couple of figures to say, in India, if you look at people who earn more than $20 a day, there are about close to 250 odd million consumers, right? And if you look at the consumers who are, today buying anything on e-commerce or on, and they are close to about 300 odd million. So they've bought something or the other. And then you look at the propensity of how much of that is beauty consumers who's buying on e-commerce. It's close to about 80 million. So from a 300 million, what you're looking at is about 80 million consumers who actually ever bought any beauty product online, right? So what we expect and what our internal estimates are that this, in the next coming 3 years, is going to double. So we're going to see almost closer to 100 odd million consumers getting on to e-commerce online to buy their first beauty product. For us, it's very important that this point of time is where they would choose to either keep coming back because of the experience they've had. And this is where Anchit, the platforms like Nykaa, etc., play a very, very key part in making sure that the repeat customer, etc., because it's about the acquisition part of the whole story. And the second part is about education, because when this consumer is coming for the first time, who is going to educate them in terms of what they really need for themselves? So the big cliched personalization at scale story is something which really gets accelerated because of tech. And this is where fundamentally we come in as partners. For example, the VTOs or the virtual try-ons today, which are happening for makeup or for hair color, etc. Today, we are very proud to say that we partner with Anchit and his team and Nykaa to power that. The tech is L'Oréal tech, and it's a Moody face which today powers to. And it's not about them choosing just L'Oréal products. It's about them having a great experience, and then finally.
So you're growing the pie, essentially.
Exactly. So, and then of course there are the real beauty enthusiasts on top, who are obsessed about beauty and who we really love.
The early adopters, who everybody loves.
And the idea is to keep feeding that pool and to keep making that bigger. So that's what our intention is.
So, Geetika, clearly the headroom for growth is significant. While everybody talks about the large Indian addressable market, the sobering aspect is that there are only, in terms of the category of, or the class of people that consume, it's still much smaller than the overall sort of addressable market that everybody talks about when they talk about India. How are you approaching India and Bharat? Is there a different strategy for both? Because as the report also indicates, there's a big surge in demand coming in outside of the metros from tier 2 towns, tier 3 towns as well, and the democratization of e-commerce has actually helped build out that story. So is there a dual strategy in place?
So we do actually have, different products, different innovation pipelines for serving different parts of the country, really. So, like you said, the democratization of e-commerce really helps because you can really make through PIN codes access of every PIN code practically in the country. The kind of products that would sell out could be either smaller in size, could be more base,
But the sachayization is an old story. I mean, that's the old FMCG story that's played out. Is there anything different in the way that you're reaching out to that consumer?
So, like for example, sunscreens, right? We have base sunscreens, which are body sunscreens, but then you have face sunscreens, then you have sunscreen for sensitive skin, then you have sunscreen sprays, then you have sunscreen for kids, right? So there are different segments of the society that you really tap with the same category. Similarly, in skincare, there are base creams, there are new kind of things in the innovation pipeline for us, and then there is of course new brands that you could tap into. So there is a different strategy beyond just the sachet kind of space.
Okay, Anchit, let's talk about what we can expect now as far as the future is concerned. And I would imagine that for a lot of people in this audience as well and watching us online, the explosion that we've seen with the D2C brands coming in, and they're competing for shelf space, they're competing for a piece of your wallet along with the Niveas and the L'Oreals of the world as well. Now, while the entry barriers have come down significantly and they're able to get started, how hard is it to sustain? I mean, we still have very few that D2C brands that have crossed that 100 crore revenue mark, which is again something that the report talks about. How hard is it to go to start D2C, but more importantly to scale up D2C?
Yeah, I think that's the billion-dollar question that everyone's asking, and you're right. I mean, the barriers to entry are low to set up a brand in India, and e-commerce platforms have made it even easier because now overnight a D2C brand can launch and they have access to 30 million customers just on Nykaa.com alone. Forget the other horizontal platforms and forget, so there is the barriers to entry have become very low. So I think that's what led to a massive supply in terms of the number of brands which got launched. However, it is incredibly difficult to build a brand that sustains and lasts. Not only in terms of reaching a revenue mark, but that remains relevant for an extended period of time. And there are a few who are on the path to achieving that in India. But the real test of time is 15, 20 years from now. If you look at L'Oréal, it's a 100-plus-year-old company. Yeah. Even Nivea and Bersdorf is an incredibly old, the brand has been around for many, many decades. Yeah. And it manages to be around because it all starts with the quality of the product and the quality of the innovation and staying relevant. I think India has a crop of incredibly talented founders in the D2C space, and a lot of them are here today. And they have the ability to win because India is a young market, right? Consumers are impressionable. So I think it's really about getting the quality right and getting the product market fit right. But not just getting it right today, but getting it right every single year for the next many, many decades. Yeah. And if they can do that, then scale is not an issue because then you're growing along with what is a large opportunity. So I think the vintage of D2C brands in India today is still very young. You hardly have brands that are older than 5 years old. Yeah. So we're expecting a lot from them. For them to get to 100 crores, 200, 500 is actually a really good result. But yes, to take it to the next 1,000, 10,000 crore number, I think for that they have to they need to continue to execute year after year. And I think that is where the true test lies. And I think they can absolutely do it. Some of them, of course, it's not everybody can succeed. Sure. Some of them can, and a lot of them are in this room today, and I hope that at the 10th anniversary of this beauty summit, we'll have one of them on stage telling us about what they did that's allowed them to succeed.
To build that brand. Absolutely. We look forward to that, and we do hope that we see those stories play out. But Geetika and Aseem, I want to ask the two of you the question that was raised there by Ankit. As we look at the beauty landscape evolving, Aseem, I'll start by asking you, especially for someone who's just gotten into the business, they're a couple of years into the business, have started a D2C brand of their own. Do you believe it's going to be imperative to marry specialization with scale in order to get the profit which is in the niches essentially? Or do you believe that, deeper and wider is the approach to take?
Good question, I think. Very good question, because for me, there are a couple of things. Taking from Anchit and his conversation, I think the underlying principle which we are talking about, because these are all very young brands and young entrepreneurs who are getting in the beauty space, which we think is super great because they bring in the dynamism, they bring in the positioning of figuring out specific products which are very, very quick to market, etc. But the underlying principle still remains, because beauty as a category is based on trust and authenticity, right? It's not just about what new product have I brought in. It's about that product to first deliver what it claims, and it has to keep doing that for a very long time. And this is why, figuring out, and if you figured out a specific product which really starts to catch consumers' attention, it is about then scaling it up. From my side, because it is also about not just scale, but it is also about the length of time. Yeah. It continues to deliver on trust, building the trust and authenticity part to the entire brand. And the normal tendency is to scale up very quickly and launch everything. Yeah. For us, for 30 years, we've concentrated on, there was a category which L'Oréal, and we're very proud to say that, which we created in India, was creme colorants, right? It has taken us 30 years for that category to become what it has become, and it is still not something which is equal to a shampoo or a makeup, you know. But still, it is something which is life-changing for consumers who use today a hair color.
Yeah.
Whether they use it in a salon, it takes about 350,000 hairdressers every year to be trained by L'Oréal for them to deliver a great color result inside the 50,000 salons which we are present in.
Over 30 years.
Exactly. and then it takes, a certain amount of pricing strategy in terms of formats to go down deeper to the consumers who are all spread out, not just in the 5 top metros,
Right.
and beyond, who would want the pie of that product and have that experience. So it's both, but patience, authenticity, and trust, and giving it a little bit of time to scale up, because in the end, India is a very diverse country.
Yeah. It's many countries in one country. But Geetika, the same question to you. Specialization and scale, and especially as you said, for Nivea, which is in the process, as you pointed out, of reimagining and reinventing itself. What will be the levers or the pillars that you now intend to focus on?
So I do believe we do have the mass markets, right, with the current offerings that we have. At this moment, we are in the space of exciting new launches. Like I was mentioning, the sunscreen, we were fairly quickly sold off of, on Nykaa. And therefore, it just gives you a sense that there is that niche consumer that exists and is willing to pay good money for it. We also believe there are many categories where we haven't even started making enough kind of inroads, and that is the area that we will focus on more going forward. We are looking at new brands that could come. So Anchit mentioned Biostorf is not just Nivea, it is other brands as well. And therefore, what more could we do in that space to answer? So I think to the point of Aseem saying quality, however, needs to be a given. Because if you don't build up on a great quality product, then that foundation is not strong enough. So while we may start off with niche, specialized, few consumers kind of products, they will always be great quality, and they will hopefully then scale up.
So before I get to Anchit, let me ask the two of you, again, room full of entrepreneurs here who are listening to what you have to say. Is M&A in inorganic growth going to be the way forward for large incumbents like you? I mean, you talked about how nimble they are, how they've been able to address specific needs for consumers. Would M&A drive not just L'Oréal and Nivea specifically, but in general, do you believe that over the next 5 years, we're likely to see a significant amount of consolidation in the market?
Well, Biostorf has done some M&A recently. There is Shantakai, which is this beautiful brand that has now been part of our fold. So yes, I think globally that is a trend we are seeing. And actually we are seeing so many new launches here. Potentially some of them may kind of want to be part of larger organizations. So you never know how things may turn out.
Aseem?
No, for us, clearly, from a L'Oréal Group's perspective, M&A is part of the strategy. So, but then you're looking for brands which can be really scaled up, not only in India, because it's an international group, but also looking at opportunities if they can be relevant for some of the consumers outside the country, etc.
So could India be an incubator to take brands global?
Why not? And that's something which we should be looking out on the horizon, with all the great entrepreneurs and all the great work which is being done in the beauty segment by the indies, as we call them, in our offices. And we really respect them, and we look forward to what they do. We understand and we learn from them as well. So.
And your checks are ready. But Anchit, let's talk about the next wave that we're expecting to see take off. Let's start with Nykaa Man. I mean, we're all talking about the Indian woman as the consumer, but let's talk about men. I mean, have men gotten into the game? Rohan did a great job of saying hyaluronic acid, so I'm guessing that there's a lot more of an awareness in the consuming population, but how's that shaping up?
Yeah, firstly, I'll just say that the question you just asked, Aseem and Geetika, you should ask in the next panel.
I intend to.
No, so I think, look, there is so much yet to be done for the women consumer in India. It is the early innings for India in terms of consumption of beauty. We have the lowest per capita spend on beauty in the world. Our GDP per capita, of course, is now telling a different story. When China went through this in 2006, you saw the way the category exploded. So there's still a lot of work to be done on our core demographic, which is women. Now, coming to your question on men, for me personally, of course, it's a very important demographic. And I think that there is immense opportunity. If you look at some other markets like South Korea or even European and US markets, there is clearly a growing trend for beauty. I think for men, it's going to be a lot about self-care to begin with. So skin care, hair care, fragrance. Fragrance, by the way, is already a very big category for men. Skincare, I think grooming has been historically big, but now you'll see a movement more into aging, pigmentation, and other skincare concerns. So absolutely, I don't think there's any reason why Nykaa Man cannot be a very big business. We, of course, have built the capabilities, the technology exists. It's a matter of customer acquisition. And as we see men in India starting to make that early inroads into this sector in a more meaningful way, of course, there are brands like L'Oréal has Garnier, and even Nivea, of course, is a unisex brand.
Yeah.
But as we start to see the shoots of this becoming slightly more mainstream, we have the ability to very quickly move on Nykaa Man and to scale that. It's just a matter of acquiring the customers, and we know how to do that because we've done it obviously for beauty and for fashion. So we have the ability, and it's just when the time is right, you might see more from us on that front.
Okay, when the time is right. Do you believe the time is likely to be right over the next few years, or is it going to take longer?
I think the way things change,
I mean,
no one can
men are
talk.
falling behind in general, so, is it going to take longer for them to catch up?
You'd be surprised. I think Nykaa has become so synonymous with beauty in India that there are a lot of men who shop on the Nykaa platform as well. I think I can't, I honestly, I think in the next 6 months, I can't say that this is going to become big in the next 6 months, but I think over the next 2 to 3 years, this could become very big. And I think brands like L'Oréal, Nivea, and others are actually, they have the assortment, and they are also ready to jump along with us when the time is right. So again, when the time is right.
When the time is right, and it does boil down to timing, and of course the expectation is that as we move up in terms of per capita consumption, and as our per capita goes up and doubles, that's the aspiration and the hope that we will see the consumption engine. Last question, and Aseem, I'm going to start with you. How important is India globally for L'Oréal from a market point of view and an innovation point of view as well?
Very important, and I'll start with L'Oréal's core, which is the DNA, which is based on innovation. We've got 20, research and innovation centers across the world, of which 2 are present in India.
Okay.
So in terms of investment from the group side, there is a disproportionate investment on innovations which should be coming out of India, and they do come out of India. So in fact, hair color as a category is something which we are catering to across the world, from India in terms of innovation.
So it's making India for the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. And India's importance, like I said, Shereen, before, is about consumer acquisition, because the amount of consumers which will get into the fold of beauty and become sophisticated in their routines, as we call them, or regimes, as we call them, is going to be almost unstoppable for the coming 2, 3, 4 decades. So it's very strategic from that angle for the group L'Oréal, our country. So.
Well, that's great to hear, and we wish you the very best of luck with that. Geetika, both from a serving India point of view as well as an innovating in India point of view, what does it mean?
No, super critical. And as we were discussing earlier, like China, in 2007 used to have the same kind of per capita beauty consumption that we are at today. And therefore, if 15 years later we would be there, we would be almost 5 times the size. I think that is so exciting for everybody, and every company therefore is rightfully investing innovation, resources ahead of the game to ensure that we really win in India. I do believe therefore Biostroph has the right efforts to ensure that we are kind of innovating what we need to do to get India right first. So super critical on the global agenda.
Super critical for the global agenda. Anchit, small baby steps of taking Nykaa global over the next 5 years is, taking Indian brands via Nykaa global. Is that an aspiration?
Look, I think India is the biggest story for the next 10 years for our category. We're lucky to have been early and to be large in this space and to have an ability to create a market. So India will remain priority number 1, and it is the biggest focus for everyone in this room and for us as well. As an Indian-owned and managed homegrown company, this is our right to win this market. Yes, of course, there are certain other markets where we see opportunity, like the Middle East, where we have made a start. And I think we'll be very selective. It's not about, we're not going to look for growth outside of India. There's enough growth to be had inside India. If we do find that what we've built in India can cater to markets where we have, again, a right to win, you will see us make a move. But at this point in time, I can say between India and the Middle East, we're quite busy, and we're in two excellent markets, two very different types of markets, but two excellent markets that should sustain growth for many, many years to come.
Well, Anchit, Geetika and Aseem, many, many thanks. I was going to end by saying that we're going to do a challenge of who's going to spell hyaluronic acid the fastest, but I'll leave it for another day. Thank you very, very much. We wish you the very best of luck, and we hope that you continue to build on your strategies to win in India and win for the Indian consumer. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for our panel this evening. Thank you so much.